Welcome to Naturally High, the podcast for those ready to transform their lives through holistic healing and empowered self-discovery. I'm your host, Jeanne Foot, a lifelong learner trained in addiction, mental health, and trauma recovery, and your guide on this journey. On this show, you'll find transformational tools, inspirational stories designed to help you break through addiction, trauma, and adversity of any kind. In a world overflowing with information, we focus on real change, understanding the why behind your patterns and forging new pathways to wellness. Join me at therecoveryconcierge.com and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Together, let's change not just the conversation around mental health and addiction, but how we treat it and how you treat yourself. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Naturally High. I am so thrilled that you were with me today. And today we are going to take a deep dive into self with a capital S. I'd love for you to get to know who you really are and the very essence that makes you as unique as your thumbprint. I'd love for each and every one of us to really fall in love with yourself the way you would cherish a dear friend, a child, a family member, someone who's really special to you. I'd love for you to really take this dive into yourself and find out who you really are without your name, your accomplishments, status, maybe your possessions, your beliefs, and strip to the innate core of your fullest expression of you and what you came here to do, to be, to claim. You may hear me talk about concepts that are worth repeating over and over again, and they may be taught or spoken about in a different context, but it means really that they're worth paying attention to because that's why I keep coming back to them. And over the years, I've seen people try to change all sorts of external conditions, such as their jobs, their partners, their relationships, maybe even move across country geographically to try to, I think, outrun ourselves. But the common factor is that we are the common denominator in our own lives. In other words, we're going to follow ourselves wherever we go. And believe me, this is something I've tried over the years, but none of us can ever outrun ourselves. So we want to not fall back into the same paradigms over and over again, because when we're trying to make a change, we say, okay, well, we'll do this instead, or we'll go here instead, or maybe this job or this money, financial opportunity or relationship or whatever it may be for each and every one of us will be the placebo, the one thing that's going to change everything for us. But in reality, it's not, because we are the common denominator in our own lives, and we must understand our needs and our desires and what truly motivates us, as well as what undermines our success and our happiness and our results. And unless we really have a clear understanding of what that is, we will repeat over and over and over again. And it may even look like we're making progress, but all we are doing is moving a few steps forward and possibly more backwards with the illusion of moving towards our goal, but really spinning. My analogy is, for those of you who grew up in the 70s, Fred Flintstone, where he used to run and he's like a yabba yabba do, and he's like spinning on the step. He's going nowhere. And that's so often what happens for each and every one of us. We think we're moving, but we're not moving anywhere. It is not until we bring our emotional drivers into our consciousness that we truly evaluate and understand what is truly working for us. Unless we take a moment to really see and evaluate what is working, what isn't working, are we falling in the same patterns or the delusions that we're just going to keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. So we can appear very busy doing nothing, but we may not be going anywhere close to where we want to go. And I believe the purpose of awakening to consciousness is really to get to know ourselves in a way that we never understood until now. So it's really about stripping down, being okay with self-inquiry and being okay with the quiet, because you can't have these glimmers of downloads unless we are in the quiet and in that self. If we're distracted with noise and busyness all the time, we're never going to know who we are. And we want to have an experience of self-liberation through self-realization, understanding our truest nature and taking personal responsibility for our growth and fulfillment, so we can redesign our life in a way that is so aligned with what's meaningful to us and our values that we create a life that we don't need to escape from. And that's the whole purpose of Naturally High. It's a lifestyle redesign in a way that you can be your biggest advocate for your own self-agency, your self-liberation, for your sovereignty, that you don't even need to worry what other people think of you, or, you just love your life so much. That's what I would want for each and every one of us. Brene Brown, one of my favorite authors, talks about the armor we put on us and how we armor up and cover up as a form of protection. And most of the time, we approach life with armor for two reasons: because we're not comfortable with our emotions and we equate vulnerability with weakness. And we have been conditioned that if we show a side of us that may not be desirable, that is weakness. Our experiences of trauma have taught us that vulnerability is dangerous. Violence and oppression have made our soft front a liability, and we struggle to find a place emotionally and physically safe enough to be vulnerable. Brene Brown, Brave in the Wilderness. The good news is there's a way back. When we protect our heart from pain and heartache, we lose the ability to let the love, joy, and compassion in as well. Like, we armor up. And so we don't want to get hurt, but at the same time, we're not allowing true love to penetrate, and we can't receive as well. And so I've always been intrigued by human behavior, for better and worse. What exactly drives people to behave in ways that defy all logic? To struggle is what makes us human. We are universally connected to each other, but most of us are sleepwalking through our life. We're unconscious, disconnected to self and others, distracted, and literally hydroplaning through our life. Best analogy I can give you is like being in your car and you're driving and you don't know where you're going. You know how you're sometimes in your head and you kind of just driving somewhere, and then before you know it, if you're not paying attention, you really have lost where you're going. And that's exactly what happens when we're in our heads in this faux reality of our thoughts. We can be going through the motions of life, but we're really not in life. We're literally hydroplaning over our life. I don't think many of us give priority to our own life and well-being. We are so overextended to serve and give to others, whether it's our family, our employers, our clients, and we lack the energy and the discipline to go through a self-inquiry process. It's more like to see what is working well in our life and where, if any, are there adjustments to be made so we can raise our standards and change our habits. We can't change what we're not aware of, what we don't measure. And often we resign ourselves to the idea that just because it's always been this way, it has to stay this way, let alone taking the time to confront our own humanity, our messiness, our complexity, and explore the very edges that often undermine us. It's only when we own who we truly are that you are able to see me in you, and I can see me in you. So let's get comfy, because we're going to take a deep dive today. And I encourage you to give yourself the gift of presence. Turn off your notifications while you're listening. This is a gift for you to better understand who you are within a safe, compassionate, non-judgmental space. As one of my beloved mentors who just recently passed, Dr. Marty Glenn, she used to remind us that all of you is welcome here, including the shadow parts, the underbelly of what makes each of us so illogical at times. There's no blame, no shame, just pure understanding. Your questions and comments are always welcomed, and I encourage you to submit them. I would love nothing more than to hear from you as what lands for you, what resonates, where do you still struggle, what do you want to listen to, as well as what's worked for you. So please feel free to reach out at info@therecoveryconcierge.com, and I will make sure to address each of your comments that come my way. If you knew that there was a secret code to help you understand how to live your best life and design it in a way that motivates your choices and helps you move towards living a life that is beyond what you could have ever imagined, I bet you'd want to know how, wouldn't you? Think of this time together as a foundational blueprint for you to unlock infinite potential and fulfillment in your life. Think of this as an investment in your time that will grow dividends returned to you. So today we're going to unpack how to apply self-mastery when we face challenges in life, which is inevitable, rather than fall back to the level of our experiences, our paradigms. I want us to look at how do we raise and create new standards and habits that we go from becoming fragile, which means we're easily breakable, to resilience, because there's a lot of focus on resilience, where we become more sturdy, and life has improved. But I think we want to land at becoming antifragile. Being anti-fragile is the opposite of fragile, which is where we are unbreakable. We embrace challenges and setbacks and even failures as inevitable and part of life, and opportunities to grow stronger, to not run from obstacles, rather see them as opportunities to level up our game. And this is the premise of Naturally High, is that life becomes infinitely richer, better than there's no reason to return to your old way of life. There's nothing calling you back. There's nothing there for you anymore. And I spoke briefly in the last episode of how we trade our authenticity for connection. So what do I mean by that? In the simplest terms, who do you need to be loved? So who do I need to be loved? What do I need to do? We believe we need to do something to be loved. But the truth is, we are all inherently worthy. According to scientists, the mere fact that you were born is a 1 in 400 trillion chance. And we're questioning, are we deserving of safe love and connection? It's remarkable, actually. Secure attachment is something that's vital for survival as babies. They need to be fed, touched, cared for, changed, obviously. And it's vital that our caretakers respond to their needs when they cry. And it's innate within each of our physiologies that we need to feel secure. And secure attachment helps babies co-regulate with their parents or caretakers because their nervous system is not mature enough to do it on its own. So when there's a lack of secure attachment, and that's a whole nother discussion in itself, and we will talk about attachment in general, but I'm talking very high level here. When there's a lack of secure attachment, we learn that our parents are not consistent and they don't consistently respond to our needs. And what happens is over time, if this is done enough times, we learn not to reach out anymore at all. So, I was born in the late 50s. And not only were children seen and not heard, they were also taught that, if you wanted to teach a baby how to, sleep train a baby, you needed to let a crying baby fall asleep. And it works. And that's what they truly believed in the day. What really happened was that the baby fell asleep because he was exhausted and gave up. No one's coming. It's not that the baby learned. The baby didn't have the developmental ability or capacity to actually learn that this is the lesson that's being taught. So it's really tricky to be a young child from 0 to 7 because we're basically inheriting the generational trauma of the generation before. But from 0 to 7 is when we're truly unconscious still. We absorb the culture, we absorb our parents' ideals, our caretakers' ideals, our beliefs. We don't form our own. And birth to 3 is even more vital. And this is such an important time because if we get the first 3 years right, we definitely not going to spend the next 3 decades in therapy. And if we get the 0 to 7, we have a really good fighting chance that that person will be emotionally well adjusted. Because at 7, we start to take on our own independence. We start to become more conscious. We start to recognize what our desires and needs are rather than, and influenced by our friends, of course, and culture and school and all the things. But we also have an understanding that this is not just our family anymore or the environment we've been thrust into. So when there's a family dysfunction or trauma or a young child feels threatened in any way, what happens is that child, especially I'm talking 0 to 7 now, that child's going to believe that there's something wrong with them. And what happens is they need to believe that because they cannot possibly conceive that their parents are wrong, as children are completely dependent on them. And so what happens is for a child who believes there's something wrong with them, they turn that war on themselves. They recognize that their parents were right, they are wrong. And this is what creates a need for a child to adapt and to take on different archetypes, like different roles, such as the academic, the caretaker, the fixer, the pleaser, the comedian, the people, you name it, there's a role for it. And the role essentially's purpose is for that child to feel that they can keep their life as predictable as possible. Because when there's predictability, that creates safety and attunement. Although I would say false attunement. The danger is what works for us when we're children doesn't work for us as adults. And I want you to hang in there for a moment. So we've learned to adapt. We learn to be the people pleaser, which means we can never say no. And maybe as a child that works because we're trained to be somewhat obedient in order to keep our life, predictable. But as an adult, we may need to say no. We may need to have boundaries. We may need to keep our needs front and center over someone else's. So what works for us as a child doesn't work for us as an adult. And we bring our adaptive self into adult relationships with the hope that they will protect us, keep us safe. Yet it's the very thing that becomes the demise of our happiness and fulfillment in life. We start to betray our sovereignty, our own standards, and we end up overstaying in relationships. We end up overstaying in jobs. We start to lower our standards and we ignore the intuitive whisper that's begging us to pay attention, even though we know we are causing us pain, friction, and suffering. So, what I talk about here is really how we know intuitively that this is no longer working for us, but we don't feel we have any agency or choice over it. And so often we feel we have identified with our names, our bodies, our vocation, our partners, our family, our status. And although that may be part of who we are and a part of self, it's not who we really are. Rather, it's an identity that we play kind of like an actor in a play that we may or may not serve you at some point in life. And this is what happens. What works in childhood would not work in adult, mature, emotionally attuned relationships. So there comes a time where we wonder if we are enough, confronting our underbelly of our shadows, whatever the myriad of human conditions we suffer from, and every human does, from shame and loss and grief, our own resistance, our stubbornness. We're not encouraged to talk about it. So we suffer in isolation. And we think we're the only person this is happening to because we are so full of shame that we don't really talk to anybody. And it's not safe to be vulnerable. And we've been taught to not air our dirty laundry, that's for sure. So vulnerability, as we go back to the Brene Brown quote, is really seen as a weakness in our society when really it is truly a strength. And vulnerability is what really truly connects us. When I can see myself in you and you can see yourself in me, it's really what brings us into a connected way. There by the grace of God go I, you are me and I am you. And so when we are not confronting these things that really hold us back in life, they truly hold us. So we suffer in isolation until one day we just can't take it anymore. And we go walking into a therapist's office wondering, why do you do what you do? So as a counselor, I'm not against counseling or professional guidance or coaches or mentors or anything like that, because I think we are better together than alone always. But one of the challenges is that's often found in mental health is it's really very much like hearsay. There's not an attuned match to someone's needs, someone's history. Instead of accurately matching the expertise of helping professionals to the needs of the client, we just end up generically looking for a therapist or a coach or whatever and thinking that they're all created equal, which unfortunately they're not. But I want to talk about what if there was a way we, meaning you, could be the one who could invoke your own healer within. By understanding what drives you before you engage in a therapeutic process. So I don't think many of us do that. I think we just think, oh, I'm screwed. I got to go somewhere. I need some help. And that's it. Rather than spending some time trying to understand what's really going on for yourself. And I think that if we were to engage in being more curious as to what our emotional drivers are, we could expedite our therapeutic results like tenfold. There's also another component of our life, which I believe is called our unique spiritual curriculum here in Earth School. We're given our exact life we're meant to have, despite its pain and imperfections, to help us grow into the most evolved versions of ourselves. So we pick our families, they pick us. It's not rather what happened to us, but rather that life is being arranged for us so we can own our own sovereignty, so that we can learn from the family that we've been thrust into. And though it doesn't feel so comfortable, there's no question about that. As we venture into the unknown, This is the very foundation of what peer support models are built upon, evolving out of lived experience and the ones that have gone before us. We teach what we know, passing the baton onwards. And I think that there's no arguing about that. There's something to be said for somebody who has experienced something firsthand themselves when you're challenged with that very issue. It connects us, it unites us, it makes us feel that, yes, you are me and I am you. It's hard to see when we're in it, how to see clearly through the forest, through the trees, and maybe what the next step is for us. And that's why we have to have some faith. And it's important for us to always attune to our inner voice. Think of it like your intuition is your unique Wi Fi setting. That's what really amps you up and allowing your intuition to guide you to your homecoming rather than the Wi-Fi of the external world with its noise and deception and misinformation. And I think this is a really important point here because unless we get quiet, and I hope that you guys are fully listening, not distracted right now, you won't know what's true for you. You will be influenced and distracted by whatever is being presented to you in this very moment. And so this requires us to be more discerning with ourselves, saying no to things that no longer serve us. And it's taken me a lifetime to do that. My God, I want it all. And I said before, we're taught to believe we can have it all. I think more so women, we wanted to go to work. So we go to work and we raise families and children. And not to say that men don't make a contribution. Absolutely, they do. But that's a prime example of thinking that we can have it all. But at what cost? What's really important now? So when we're in self inquiry with ourselves, it creates time for reflection, whether we do it through sitting quietly, through a movement practice, journaling, answering self inquiry questions. One of the things I have started to really focus on as I narrow down is really what's my wildly important goal? A wig. Or what's important now? A win. And no matter how we connect, the goal is to create the space so we connect to our inner wisdom as we sort and shift through what is true for us and learn and unlearn what's no longer suitable in our life. What most people don't recognize is that no one talks about is the resistance and self doubt is part of the self growth process. So you heard that correctly. Like, if you want to grow, it's not a matter of making a decision. That's part of it, obviously, but it's also staying in the game when you don't feel like doing something, or the inner voice is starting to tell you, you don't really want to do this, or who do you think you are? Or you're second guessing yourself the whole way through. If you want something or desire a goal, it takes more than just the necessary steps towards it. And we think, voila, mission accomplished. In fact, the exact opposite happens. The minute we decide that we want something, everything amps up against us. The resistance, the noise, and the very things that we're trying to avoid or outrun are placed right in front of us, whether that's fear, doubt, whatever it may be. And people don't often share is the minute that you move towards something that scares you, that is part of this process. All the gremlins just ramp up, ready to go, trying to convince you that this is not a good idea, which is why applying speed to action is imperative if you want to get something moving. If you want to execute and you have a great idea, act on it now. You don't have to have the whole thing figured out, but you can have the first step figured out. That's for sure. And the more you embrace resistance as being part of your normal, your brain will be able to get on side with you and help you take the necessary steps towards your dreams. But it will take more than a decision and a commitment to it. What is the cost of saying yes to everything but you? Never thought about that? I never did until just recently. As I said, I wanted it all. So I just thought I could have it all. I'm passionate. I have a lot of ambition and drive. And I thought, why not? And I think what's common for people who struggle with mental health, especially addiction in particular, is there's a tendency to really make up for lost time. When you're alive and you're vital and you realize that, oh my God, you wasted so much time doing something that was so unhealthy for you. You really want to dive into everything. And I've had a pretty ferocious appetite for that, I have to say. So saying yes to everything feels good in the moment, You feel valued, you feel helpful, you're well liked and respected, but it's not in your best interest to say yes in your heart, especially if your heart is saying no. And saying no for the first time is really, really hard. There's no question. And it slowly erodes your happiness if you're not saying no to the things that you really need to say no to, and your confidence, and you start to feel emptier and emptier inside. So, investing in your self inquiry is like making psychological deposits into your own health and recovery bank account. Like, think of it like a ledger. Like, every time you do something amazing for yourself, like give yourself the gift of the moment and not be future tripping or looking at your rearview mirror in the past. Each time you say yes to yourself, you're literally creating equity or worth for yourself. Our identity is created based on our stories and our standards of our lived experience until now, with the idea of who do you think you are rather than who we really are. And we're being beckoned to answer the call. And this is the famous Joseph Campbell's hero story, where we know there is something more, but first we have to conquer our demons to get to the treasure inside the cave we seek. So this is when we're in alignment with our truest calling, and we know that we are more than the stories and standards that we have built our life upon until now. Not to diminish any success that you guys have had or hardships, but all you have to do is look at your results to understand, are you really in alignment with where you want to be in life? So if you want to make these changes, we need to understand the self-talk. What are you telling yourself every day? Otherwise, you're going to be deluded into thinking your self-talk is your truth. Now, this is a fact based on neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, neuroscience. The brain doesn't discern between fact and fiction. So it's so vital. You want to make sure you're setting yourself up the best possible advantage. So what are you telling yourself? If you're telling yourself you can't, you're reinforcing you can't every single moment of your life. If you're telling yourself you can, it's the same thing. That becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So are you stuck in the narratives of your formative years where they hold you back and spend your life wishing it was different? Or do you tell yourself you got this? There's no such thing as failure, only feedback. The beauty about unlearning and returning to the essence of you is the agency is in your control. So we don't think that. We don't think we have really a lot of agency, or like, oh, this happened, so it's always going to be this way. You actually have the autonomy to change your circumstances. It applies to your health when it comes to healing, in terms of epigenetics, and we'll go into that in another session for sure. But you have the autonomy to change your circumstances. But first, it starts with how you see yourself, because how you see yourself is how you see your world. Think of it, if I'm putting on rose-colored glasses, the world looks pretty damn rosy to me. And if I am putting on black, dark shades, that's how I see the world as well. So it really starts with how you see yourself. And the beauty about unlearning is that you've got the control. Now, in peak performance and personal development, these concepts are really well understood. And it's really surprising, but in therapeutic circles, it really isn't. It's never a once and done. We start to pathologize why we're this way, and we look for evidence and reasons as opposed to agency around what we can actually do about it. And I think that's really what we want to do. It's not that we're trying to hydroplane through our trauma and our pain. We must understand that we need to want to really change as well as understand it. It's no good just having what I call paralysis in the analysis of what happened, because otherwise we're just going to stay there. So changing our narratives will change our life. And that's the step in the right direction, but it's not the complete formula. There's a constant recommitment for us as humans to step into more of who we are becoming. And this requires a daily practice, which is why we call a yoga practice a practice. We come back to it again and again and again. And until our identity has integrated with becoming our future self today. Let's talk about what gets in the way of that. We talked a little bit about resistance, our self-talk. We didn't talk about the naysayers, because there's going to be lots of people who are going to want to keep you where you are because it threatens their very existence. It may not necessarily threaten their existence, but that's what they think it does. But one of the most overlooked aspects of change is that in order to change, your self image, you've got to increase your capacity to manage the transition from where you are to where you want to go. It could be maybe it's ending a job, a different career path, a relationship. It could be going into recovery as a change in identity. We release roles and let go of our stories that don't align with the vision that we have for us anymore. And that's something that I would say that most people don't do. They're so stuck in autopilot in their life that they're not really taking the time to understand who they are, what they need, what they want. And it's a shame because there's so much agency within us that we have to really determine our future. And if we want to integrate into wholeness, we must be able to regulate our nervous system to hold temporary discomfort of the changes we're about to make. So when I'm leaving a career path and going somewhere new to become an entrepreneur or maybe just a different direction, that's not going to feel comfortable. If I'm leaving a relationship, that's not going to feel comfortable. And if I'm changing my complete identity, I'm someone who has years of active addiction or substance use disorder or any kind of ism that people aren't proud of, and suddenly you're going to go into recovery, a different pathway, that's going to feel very alien. And it's very much like riding a bike for the first time or driving a car for the first time. I always talk about that. It's very, very mechanical. It's very difficult. You're thinking about all the things that you need to do. You're looking in the rearview mirror, you're looking in your side mirrors, you're looking behind you, you're looking in front of you. And it takes a lot of energy and effort. But once you've mastered driving the car, you don't even think about it. And then before you know it, one day you're hydroplaning through your life, what I was saying at the beginning. So what I said here is in order to integrate into the wholeness that you seek, we've got our mind on side. We're working on our thought process. We're giving some space to who we are and who we want to be and what drives us and why we do what we do. And now we want to change that. So we have to be able to hold the nervous system's discomfort because it will become dysregulated. And this is why it's so critical that we have tools because you need to know what you need to do. And this is the tool. I believe that different people need different tools at different times. How to build your emotional toolbox or your nervous system regulation toolbox is something we can do as a session at another time. But to give you something that you can access immediately, simple practices such as singing, humming is a great one, shaking, just like literally shaking your body, deep rhythmic breathing. Movement is in general is good. Sound is good. Breath is good. They have a vibrational frequency. The dysregulation of your nervous system when change happens is about the uncertainty. It's about the doubts. And we land in what I call the messy middle. And you take a step forward, but you haven't landed. You're not there yet. It's like transition in birth. You're not back in the womb and you're not in the world. You're in the in between. And that's why it's so painful. It's no different. And so you want to ask yourself, what can we do in these different transitions? And I think the most important thing is ask yourself, what story do you want to retire that no longer aligns with you anymore? Like, what is the vision you have for yourself? What is the story that's really holding you back? What are you hanging on to? Look for language around absolutes, always, never, must have. Like, very strong language tells a lot about someone. And we spoke a little bit about that before. But I want you to become more aware of what you're thinking by bringing your subconscious mind into your consciousness by witnessing your self-talk, slowing down as compared to hydroplaning. Become aware of your inner critic. For me, mine's been terrible. I used to call her Cruella de Vil from the Dalmatians, that woman who is absolutely horrendous. It's much better now. But it will come up at times when you least expect it. So you want to retire your inner critic and just witness how you treat yourself as the first step to change. And we all know we can treat our friends much better than we can for ourselves. We don't give ourselves the slack we deserve. But I want to remind you that worthiness is your birthright. It is inherent within each and every one of us, contrary to what you've learned or experienced. You are inherently worthy. It's not something you have to do based on what you have. It's inherent within you. to feel loved and worthy. And I want you to focus on what you're doing well rather than what you're not doing well, which is the gap. This will help build your momentum. And being compassionate towards yourself really was a game changer for me. You want to start really small if you find it's not accessible. Even if there's one thing you can admire about yourself, that will increase your self-esteem. For me, it was being able to do what I said I could do. Honoring my word was the start of building self-trust and my self-esteem. I was slowly able to rely on myself more and more by being integral with my word. Part of addiction or substance abuse is lying and not being honest. So when you start to be honest and forthcoming, there's a pride that comes with that. And that's imperative as well. So I want to talk about attachment because this really is related and correlated to our worthiness. Who do you need to be loved? I want you to focus on who you spend the most time with. They always say that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Do you need to make some changes in your circles? Do you need to implement some new boundaries? Just because something's been this way doesn't mean it can't change. We get to renegotiate the terms of our relationships. As you make changes and become a new reiteration of yourself, so can this with other people. You determine how people treat you by the standards that you will allow. So what changes do you need to make? For me, I used to settle for crumbs in my life when I really wanted the whole damn cake. My standards were low because my opinion of myself was low, and it left me to settle for crumbs. So what I meant by that is I'll use it in early love relationships. I would settle for anything, even if it wasn't really great, because someone was going to love me. Not anymore, though. I have high standards, I'm happy to say. And with therapy and coaching and immersive experience and being an avid learner, my professional development, I've now really have stepped into the most authentic version of myself. I think that comes with age and wisdom and time. And even my inner critic wants to question the time frame that it's taken me to get here. But I've squashed that somewhat. Still working on that. Have I questioned the process along the way? You bet I did. Because I have been a highly resistant person, kicking and screaming at all times. But eventually the cost of staying the same becomes so painful that it's easier to make a jump to the other side, whatever the unknown is. And that is the cave where the treasure you seek is what I wish for each and every one of you, that you claim your birthright, your awesome life that you're deserving of, and let the magic begin. And so until next time, how are you guys going to stay naturally high? Thank you for joining me for this episode of Naturally High. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or reach out to me through the links in the show notes. Together, we're changing the way the world approaches mental health, addiction, and trauma. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a rating for Naturally High on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen so you never miss an episode. For more inspiration and resources, follow me on Instagram at therecovery_concierge or visit therecoveryconcierge.com. Stay empowered, keep rising, and I'll see you in the next episode.